I never thought my engagement would end before it began, but looking back, the signs were there from the very first moment Oliver got down on one knee. My name is Harper, and this is the story of how my perfect fairy tale turned into a revenge plot worthy of a soap opera. The proposal happened during what was supposed to be a casual family dinner at the Hayes mansion. I should have known something was up when Victoria, Oliver's mother, insisted I wear the pearl necklace she'd thoughtfully sent over that morning. It felt like a collar, but I put it on anyway. "Darling, you've positioned your salad fork incorrectly again," Victoria said, her smile never reaching her eyes. "But we can't expect everyone to understand proper etiquette immediately, can we?" I shifted the fork while Dad squeezed my knee under the table. He'd taken off work early from the auto shop to be here, and I could still see traces of grease under his fingernails despite his best efforts to clean up. That's when Oliver stood up, champagne glass in hand. "I have an announcement to make." His voice trembled slightly, something I'd never heard before. "Harper Quinn, you've brought so much joy into my life." My heart stopped. This wasn't happening. Not here. Not with Victoria's eyes boring into me like laser beams. "Will you marry me?" The ring he pulled out was massive, exactly the kind Victoria would have picked. I looked at Oliver's hopeful face, then at my dad's proud smile, then at Ethan, my brother, who was watching Victoria instead of us. "Yes," I whispered, because what else could I say? The word felt both right and wrong in my mouth. Victoria clapped perfectly manicured hands. "Welcome to the family, dear. We'll have so much work to do to prepare you for your role as a Hayes." Mother, Oliver warned, but she continued. "The annual charity gala is in 3 months. We'll need to work on your presentation before then. Perhaps we can discuss some minor improvements over tea tomorrow." I felt my dad stiffen beside me. Ethan's fork clattered against his plate. But it was the way Oliver remained silent, studying his champagne instead of defending me, that made my stomach turn. As everyone raised their glasses to toast, I caught Victoria's reflection in the crystal chandelier above us. She wasn't looking at her son or at me. She was staring at my father's weathered hands, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. That's when I knew this wasn't just going to be a wedding. It was going to be a war. The first crack appeared 3 days after the engagement, during what Victoria called my refinement session. I sat in her pristine sunroom, surrounded by wedding magazines and china patterns, while she circled me like a shark sizing up its prey. "Your posture, dear. A Hayes woman never slouches." She tapped my shoulder with a rolled-up magazine. "And we simply must do something about your wardrobe. That advertising agency look won't do for our social circle." I straightened my back, feeling the ache from maintaining what Victoria deemed proper posture for the past 2 hours. The diamond ring felt heavy on my finger, like it was weighing me down rather than lifting me up. "Actually, I was thinking of a small ceremony," I ventured. "Maybe in Dad's backyard? The apple trees will be blooming in spring." Victoria's laugh cut through the air like glass breaking. "Oh, darling. Oliver is a Hayes. The governor will be attending. We can't possibly have our guests standing in a backyard." My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Need rescue? I'm outside." Before I could respond, Oliver walked in. "Mother, Harper. How's the planning going?" I waited for him to kiss me hello. He didn't. "Wonderful." Victoria beamed. "Harper's being so cooperative. Though we need to discuss the guest list." I noticed several names from her side that might not blend well with our usual crowd. I watched Oliver's face, waiting for him to say something, anything. He adjusted his tie. "Whatever you think is best, Mother." "Oliver," I started, but Victoria cut in. "Oh!" Before I forget, the country club called. They're holding the Thompson girls' wedding shower the same day as ours. Such a shame. All those board members' wives will be there instead of at yours. She sighed dramatically. "If only you'd let me book it last year when I suggested." The implication hung in the air. If only Oliver had been engaged to someone more suitable back then. My phone buzzed again. This time, I stood up. "I should go. Ethan's waiting." "Your brother." Victoria's eyebrows arched. "The one who just started at that tech startup? How innovative of him." I grabbed my bag, catching my reflection in Victoria's spotless windows. For a moment, I barely recognized myself in the pressed blazer and pearl necklace that still felt like a collar. "Harper, wait," Oliver called as I reached the door. But it was Victoria who followed me out. "Just remember, dear," she whispered, straightening my necklace with cold fingers, "a Hayes woman never runs away from a challenge." And you do want to be a Hayes woman, don't you? I left without answering, but as I slid into Ethan's car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just lost something important, and it wasn't just my dignity. "You okay?" Ethan asked, studying my face. "I'm fine," I lied, watching the Hayes mansion shrink in the rearview mirror. "Everything's fine." But we both knew it wasn't. The Hayes annual charity gala felt like walking into a beautifully decorated trap. I smoothed down the designer dress Victoria had insisted on buying me, another item on the growing list of things I owed the Hayes family. "Harper, darling." Margaret Whitmore, one of Victoria's closest friends, air-kissed my cheeks. "Such a surprise to see you here." We all thought Oliver would bring Charlotte Pierce tonight. They were practically engaged last summer, weren't they? The champagne flute nearly slipped from my hand. "I'm sorry, what?" "Oh!" Margaret's eyes widened with fake concern. "You didn't know? Charlotte's family has been friends with the Hayes for generations. Such a shame about their timing. She was in Europe when Oliver met you." I scanned the room for Oliver, finding him deep in conversation with his mother and a stunning blonde who kept touching his arm. The blonde caught my eye and smiled, the kind of smile that held secrets. "That's her, isn't it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Charlotte just returned last week," Margaret continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Victoria must be thrilled. She spent years planning their match." My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Need intel on someone named Charlotte Pierce?" I excused myself, heading for the powder room, but voices from Victoria's private study made me pause. "Be reasonable, Oliver." Victoria's voice carried through the crack in the door. "Charlotte's father sits on the board. This merger could secure your future at the firm." "Mother, I'm engaged to Harper." "An engagement can be broken." God knows this wouldn't be the first time a Hayes man had to make a practical choice over an emotional one. Silence. The kind that screams louder than words. "Just think about it," Victoria continued. "Charlotte understands our world. Harper, well, she's trying, bless her heart." I backed away, bumping into someone. You must be Harper." The blonde, Charlotte, steadied me with manicured hands. "Victoria's told me so much about you. That dress is lovely. Last season's collection, isn't it?" Before I could respond, Oliver appeared. "Charlotte, I see you've met my fiancé." "Yes, we were just discussing fashion." She laughed, touching Oliver's arm again. "Remember that boutique in Paris where we—" I watched Oliver's face soften at the memory, a memory that didn't include me. In that moment, I saw what everyone else at this party saw, an outsider wearing borrowed clothes, playing at belonging. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my dad. "Just checking in, kiddo. You still coming for Sunday dinner?" I looked at the message, then at Oliver and Charlotte laughing about shared memories, then at Victoria watching it all with satisfied eyes. Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was time to stop playing defense and start playing to win. Wedding planning with Victoria had become psychological warfare, but today's battle hit differently. I sat in her pristine home office, watching her shred my carefully selected invitation samples without even looking at them. "These simply won't do," she said, dropping the pieces into her crystal waste bin. "I've already ordered the proper invitations. Crane and Company, of course. The same design we used for Charlotte's debutante ball." My phone lit up with a text from Oliver. "Can't make lunch. Emergency at work." The third canceled lunch this week. Each time, someone had spotted him at restaurants with Charlotte, discussing business. "Speaking of Charlotte," Victoria continued, "she's offered to help with the seating arrangements. She knows everyone who matters. I can handle the seating." "Oh, darling." Victoria's laugh could freeze hell. "You don't even know half the guests. Most are Oliver's connections. Speaking of which," she slid a piece of paper across her desk. "We need to discuss removing some names from your list." I scanned the document. You want to uninvite my father's siblings? Your uncle is a plumber, dear. And your aunt. She wrinkled her nose. Well, we can't have someone who runs a food truck mingling with the senator's wife, can we? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ethan. Found something you need to see. Now, your brother, however, Victoria continued, can stay on the list. His company's recent success makes him acceptable, though he'll need coaching on proper dinner conversation. I stood up, my chair scraping against her imported marble floors. I need to go. Harper. Victoria's voice stopped me at the door. Oliver's future depends on this wedding being perfect. You do want what's best for him, don't you? 20 minutes later, I met Ethan at his office. Without a word, he handed me his tablet. There on the screen was a legal document, a prenuptial agreement I'd never seen, already containing what looked like my forged signature. The terms were brutal. I would get nothing in a divorce, would have to repay all improvement expenses Victoria had spent on me, and would have to sign a non-disclosure agreement about the Hayes family. Where did you find this? It was in the system at Oliver's firm, Ethan said quietly. Dated 3 days ago. My hands shook as I read the final clause. If I broke the engagement, I would owe the Hayes family compensation for emotional damages and social embarrassment. Harper, Ethan's voice was gentle. There's more. Check your email. I pulled out my phone to find photos of Oliver and Charlotte leaving a jewelry store yesterday, her left hand conspicuously hidden from view. The pieces clicked together like a twisted puzzle. I wasn't just fighting for my place in their world anymore, I was fighting to avoid becoming their cautionary tale. What are you going to do? Ethan asked. I thought of Victoria's smug smile, of Oliver's silence, of Charlotte's calculated touches. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. The final straw wasn't dramatic. It wasn't Victoria's latest criticism or Charlotte's perfectly timed appearances. It was Oliver's silence during our wedding venue walkthrough, as his mother systematically dismantled every dream I'd ever had about my wedding day. The garden ceremony simply won't work, Victoria declared, her heels clicking across the historic venue's stone pathway. Far too common. We'll use the grand ballroom instead. I watched a butterfly land on one of the roses I'd imagined would frame our vows. Oliver and I discussed having it outdoors. The garden is why we chose this place. Oliver understands tradition. Victoria smiled, patting her son's arm. Don't you, darling? Oliver checked his phone, avoiding my eyes. Whatever works best, mother. My engagement ring caught the sunlight, throwing sparkles that suddenly felt like warning signals. The garden was my mother's favorite place, I said quietly, before she died. Yes, yes, Victoria waved her hand dismissively. But we must consider the living, dear. Charlotte mentioned it might rain that day anyway. I froze. Charlotte? Why would Charlotte know our wedding date? The silence that followed was deafening. Oliver suddenly found his shoelaces fascinating. Oh, Victoria's surprise was too perfect, too rehearsed. Didn't Oliver tell you? Charlotte's been helping with the backup plans. Her weather app is never wrong. My phone buzzed, another message from Ethan about the prenup he'd discovered. I ignored it, focusing instead on the way Oliver's hand twitched toward his pocket, where I knew he kept his second phone. Actually, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was, I'd like to see these backup plans. Victoria's smile flickered. Perhaps we should discuss the menu instead. No. The word came out sharp enough to make both Hayes jump. I want to see everything Charlotte's been helping with. Oliver finally looked at me, panic flashing across his face. Harper, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I stepped closer, watching him retreat. Because I think your ex-girlfriend is planning our wedding while you're planning something else entirely with her. That's enough. Victoria snapped. Oliver, control your fiancé's hysteria before someone hears. Hysteria? I laughed, the sound echoing off the venue's stone walls. Is that what you call it when someone finally sees through your act? I turned to Oliver, really looking at him for the first time in weeks. You know what's funny? I kept waiting for you to choose me, to stand up for me. But you already made your choice, didn't you? Probably the same day you let your mother forge my signature on that prenup. The color drained from his face. How did you? Doesn't matter. I twisted the ring off my finger, feeling lighter with each turn. What matters is I'm finally making my choice. I dropped the ring at Victoria's feet, where it landed with a satisfying ping against the stone. Consider this my backup plan. 3 weeks after I dropped the ring, Victoria launched her counterattack. I was at work when the email hit everyone's inbox, board members, clients, even the cleaning staff. Photos of me from college, carefully selected to look far worse than they were, along with anonymous claims about my unstable behavior and gold-digging tactics. By lunch, my boss had called me into his office. "We value discretion here, Harper," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Perhaps some time off would be beneficial." I walked out with my personal items in a cardboard box, my phone buzzing with messages from unknown numbers. Victoria had made sure the email went viral in her social circle. "Don't worry," Ethan said when I showed up at his apartment. "We've got enough evidence about the forged prenup, too. They're claiming I knew about it. I cut him off. That I agreed to it during a dinner party. They have witnesses, Ethan. All those people who watch me try to fit into their world? They're all backing Victoria's story." My phone lit up with a text from Oliver. "Mother's willing to make this go away if you sign the NDA. Please, Harper. For both our sakes." Another message followed, from Charlotte. "You should have known your place." I threw my phone across the room, watching it crack against Ethan's expensive art piece, the one he'd bought to celebrate his startup's success. Now his investors were getting nervous too, thanks to his connection to the Quinn scandal. "Dad called," Ethan said quietly. "The auto shop's losing customers. Someone's been spreading rumors about him overcharging the Hayes family for years." The weight of it all hit me at once. Victoria wasn't just trying to hurt me, she was systematically destroying everything and everyone I loved. My phone rang again, an unknown number. When I answered, Victoria's voice was silk smooth. "I warned you about challenging a Hayes, dear. Did you really think you could walk away without consequences? Sign the papers, admit publicly that you manipulated Oliver, and this ends. And if I don't? Then I hope your father has a backup plan for retirement." And Ethan, such a shame about those investors pulling out. All because his sister couldn't accept her limitations. After she hung up, I stood at Ethan's window, watching the city lights blur through my tears. Everything I'd worked for, everything my family had built, Victoria was burning it all down with a smile. "Harper," Ethan's voice was gentle. "Whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense." I wiped my eyes, something cold and determined settling in my chest. If Victoria wants to destroy everything I love, maybe it's time I returned the favor. How? I turned to face him, feeling nothing but ice in my veins. By giving her exactly what she fears most, a real scandal. The Hayes annual charity gala became my battleground. I walked in wearing the same dress from my first disastrous evening there, but this time, I wasn't trying to fit in. I was there to burn it all down. Victoria spotted me first, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. "Security," she hissed, but I was already moving through the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, my voice carrying across the marble floor. "I believe I owe you all an apology." The room hushed. Oliver appeared at the edge of the crowd, Charlotte clinging to his arm. "Perfect. You see, I've been terribly dishonest," I continued, watching Victoria's face pale. "I did sign that prenup. I signed lots of things, actually. Like the checks Victoria wrote to cover up Oliver's gambling debts. Or the documents hiding Hayes Industries' creative accounting from the IRS." Victoria lunged forward. "She's lying." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone. Ethan's quite good with computers. Amazing what you can find in private servers. "Would anyone like to see?" "That's enough." A new voice cut through the tension. Richard Hayes, Oliver's father, emerged from his study. "Victoria, my office." "Now." "Richard, she's obviously." "Now." His voice could have frozen fire. "And Oliver? Bring Charlotte. We need to discuss her role in all this." As Victoria passed me, her perfect mask cracked. "You have no idea what you've done." "Actually," Richard said, "she's done exactly what I hoped she would." The room went silent again. Richard turned to me, his eyes tired but kind. I've spent 20 years watching Victoria destroy people to protect our family's image. When Oliver brought you home, I saw someone strong enough to finally break the cycle. Dad? Oliver's voice cracked. Your mother needs help, son. Professional help. I've enabled her behavior too long, and it's hurt too many people. He looked at me. I'm sorry, Harper. For all of it. Victoria's carefully constructed world crumbled in real time. Her social circle backed away, phones already buzzing with new gossip. Charlotte disappeared into the crowd. Oliver just stood there, looking lost. The documents, Victoria whispered. You'll destroy your own family. No, I said quietly. I already sent everything to Richard last week. What happens next is his choice. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Victoria? My father's auto shop just got a very generous contract from Hayes Industries. Funny how things work out. As I walked away, I heard Richard say, Victoria, it's time we discuss divorce. I stepped into the cool night air where Ethan waited with our father. You okay? Dad asked, pulling me into a hug that smelled of motor oil and home. Yeah, I said, watching the Hayes Mansion's lights flicker behind us. I think I finally am. 6 months after the gala, I found myself sitting in a small cafe in Barcelona, watching tourists stream past the window. Ethan had insisted I use his startup bonus to travel, claiming I'd earned a victory lap around Europe. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Hayes Industries announces new CEO following Richard Hayes' retirement. The photo showed Oliver in a suit, looking more like his father than his mother. The article mentioned his recent community outreach initiatives and therapy advocacy programs. I closed the alert just as a familiar figure slid into the seat across from me. Victoria Hayes looked different, older without her perfect makeup, but somehow more real. You're a hard woman to find, she said, placing an envelope on the table. That was the point of leaving. She nodded, fingers tracing the envelope's edge. I'm in treatment now. Part of the divorce settlement. It's helping. She pushed the envelope toward me. This isn't an apology. I don't think we're there yet. But it is an explanation. Inside was a worn photo of a young Victoria in a waitress uniform, standing outside a diner. She looked happy, unguarded. I was that girl once, she said quietly. Before I married into the Hayes family and let their expectations become my prison. Then I became the warden. Why are you here? To tell you your right to break free. And to thank you for breaking the cycle. She stood, straightening her non-designer jacket. Oliver's different now. Better. Sometimes destroying something broken makes room for something stronger to grow. She left before I could respond, disappearing into the crowd like a ghost of my past. That evening, I sat on my hotel balcony, writing postcards to Dad and Ethan. A message popped up from Mia with a photo of Dad's auto shop, now expanded thanks to the Hayes contract. Another from Ethan showed his startup's latest success. Mind if I join you? Ryan stood in the doorway, his daughter Sophie peeking around his legs. We'd met 3 weeks ago when he helped me with directions, and somehow kept running into each other since. Sophie wants to know if you'll tell her another story, he said, smiling that warm smile that never asked me to be anything but myself. I looked at Victoria's photo one last time before tucking it away. Actually, I have a pretty good one about a girl who thought she wanted a fairy tale, but found something better instead. How does it end? Sophie asked, climbing into my lap. I watched the Barcelona sunset paint the sky in colors no Hayes mansion could match, feeling the weight of my past finally lift. It ends with her writing her own story, I said, hugging Sophie close. And this time, she gets to choose every word.